The stars had been silent for what felt like an eternity. A century of war had drained the cosmos of its vibrancy, leaving only a faint echo of what once was. The galaxy, once teeming with life and possibility, was now a mere shadow of its former self. At the edge of the universe, on a small planet called Elysium IV, humanity clung to existence like a desperate lifeline. The war with the alien empire, known as the Kralian, had ravaged the world, leaving behind a desolate landscape of ash and ruin. General Rachel Kim, a battle-hardened veteran of the conflict, stood atop a crumbling skyscraper, gazing out at the devastation below. Her eyes, once bright and full of hope, now seemed to hold a deep sadness. She had lost count of the years, the battles, and the lives she'd seen sacrificed in the name of humanity's survival. The war had begun as a series of skirmishes between humanity's outer colonies and the Kralian Empire's expansionist forces. What started as a localized conflict quickly escalated into a galaxy-spanning conflagration. The two sides had clashed on countless worlds, leaving behind a trail of destruction and death in their wake. As the war dragged on, the fabric of society began to fray. Governments crumbled, economies collapsed, and entire civilizations were reduced to ashes. Rachel's own family had been lost in one of the early battles, taken from her by a Kralian sniper's bullet. The pain still lingered, a constant reminder of what humanity had suffered. The Kralian Empire, with its technological prowess and seemingly endless resources, had pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. Their ships, hulking monoliths of steel and energy, had become the scourge of the galaxy. Every world that fell to their might was reduced to a charred husk, its inhabitants either killed or enslaved. Rachel's gaze fell upon the ruins of Elysium IV's capital city. Once a thriving metropolis, it now lay in shambles, a testament to humanity's desperation. The streets were empty, save for the occasional roving band of scavengers, searching for anything of value amidst the rubble. The war had also brought about a series of modifications within humanity itself. Genetic engineering and cybernetic enhancements had become commonplace, as people sought any advantage in the face of overwhelming odds. Rachel's own body was a testament to these changes. Her eyes were now augmented with advanced optics, her limbs strengthened by cybernetic implants. As she stood there, lost in thought, Rachel heard the distant rumble of engines. A Kralian dreadnought, one of their most feared ships, had appeared on the horizon. Its hull was a deep crimson, emblazoned with the Empire's insignia, a stylized spiral that seemed to mock humanity's pitiful attempts at resistance. The general felt a familiar sense of dread wash over her. She knew what was coming next. The Kralian would send their ground forces, a tidal wave of mechanized infantry and assault drones, to crush the last remnants of human resistance. Elysium IV would soon join the long list of worlds that had fallen to the Empire's might. Rachel turned away from the view, her heart heavy with sorrow. She knew that this was it, humanity's final stand against an enemy that seemed almost invincible. The general had a duty to fulfill, one that would determine the course of their species' future. She took a deep breath, shouldering the weight of her responsibility. It was time to make a decision, one that would decide the fate of Elysium IV and, possibly, humanity itself. The Kralian forces descended upon the planet like a plague, their ground troops spilling out of armored transports and taking up positions around the perimeter of the city. Rachel's people, a ragtag force of guerrilla fighters and scattered survivors, had retreated to the outskirts, preparing for what would likely be their final battle. As the Empire's soldiers closed in, Rachel called an emergency meeting with her top commanders. The fate of Elysium IV hung in the balance, and every decision counted. "We can't take on the entire Kralian army," one of her advisors said, his voice laced with despair. "We'll be overrun within hours." Rachel nodded grimly. "I know that, but we have to try something. We can't just give up without a fight." The room fell silent as Rachel outlined her plan. It was desperate, maybe even suicidal, but it was the only chance humanity had. "We'll use our last reserve of nukes," she said, her voice firm and resolute. "We'll target their supply lines, disrupt their communication networks. We can't win a straight-up fight, so we'll have to get creative." The room erupted into debate, with some arguing that the plan was too reckless, while others saw it as their only hope. Rachel listened patiently, weighing each argument before making her decision. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Elysium IV in a deep, foreboding shadow, Rachel issued the order to prepare for the final push. Her people, with hearts heavy and spirits low, readied themselves for what would be their last stand against an enemy that had pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. The night air was alive with tension as the two forces clashed in a frenzy of gunfire, explosions, and screams. Rachel stood at the forefront of her lines, leading by example as she fired her own rifle into the chaos. The Kralian army, seemingly endless and unstoppable, surged forward like a tidal wave. Elysium IV's defenders held their ground, fighting with every ounce of strength they possessed. For a few brief hours, it seemed that perhaps, just perhaps, humanity might yet survive this desperate struggle against an enemy that had been thought invincible. But the Empire would not be denied. Their machines, a seemingly endless horde of tanks and walkers, pushed back Rachel's people with relentless ferocity. The defenders fought bravely, but they were vastly outnumbered and outgunned. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, it became clear that all was lost. Elysium IV would soon join the long list of worlds that had fallen to the Kralian Empire's might. Rachel stood amidst the chaos, her eyes fixed on a nearby building that housed the last remnants of humanity's scientific community. A team of scientists, led by Dr. Ilara Vex, had been working on a top-secret project, one that might just hold the key to humanity's survival. As the Kralian forces closed in, Rachel knew she had to make a choice. She could either fall back and try to regroup, or she could follow her heart and attempt to save what was left of their species. With a heavy heart, Rachel turned toward the building, knowing that this might be her final act as General of Elysium IV's forces. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and she was determined to see it through to the end. She charged forward, her rifle at the ready, alongside a handful of loyal troops who had sworn to follow her until the very end. Together, they battled their way through the Kralian army, pushing toward the building where Dr. Vex's team waited. The scientist herself stood outside the entrance, frantically signaling for Rachel and her people to join her inside. As the general approached, a blast of fire from a Kralian rifle singed Rachel's ear, forcing her to duck behind cover. That momentary reprieve gave Dr. Vex time to open the door, beckoning Rachel and her team to safety within. They pushed forward, fighting off Kralian soldiers as they entered the building. Inside, the scientists had prepared a hidden underground bunker designed to withstand even the most intense attacks. Rachel's people poured in, exhausted but alive, as the doors slammed shut behind them. The general turned toward Dr. Vex, her heart heavy with sorrow and hope. "You have it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Vex nodded, clutching a small data crystal that seemed to be the last thing holding humanity together. "Yes, Rachel, I do." Rachel took the crystal, feeling a mix of emotions: sadness for what had been lost, hope for what might yet come. The fate of Elysium IV, and indeed humanity itself, hung precariously in the balance. As the Kralian forces stormed the building, seeking to eliminate the last remnants of human resistance, Rachel stood resolute, her grip on Dr. Vex's data crystal, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always a chance for redemption and rebirth. With a heavy heart, she made the decision that would seal Elysium IV's fate and possibly determine the course of human history itself. As the Empire's soldiers closed in, Rachel activated the device that Dr. Vex had spent years perfecting. A blinding flash of light enveloped the planet, as energy from the data crystal surged through the bunker's systems, bathing Elysium IV in a brilliant, ethereal glow. The general felt a strange sensation wash over her, as if time itself was bending and warping around them. And then, in an instant, everything went black. The darkness that followed was profound, a silence so complete it seemed to swallow the very fabric of existence. Rachel's vision blurred, and she stumbled forward, blindly searching for something, anything to cling to. As her eyes slowly regained focus, she saw that they had been transported to another realm, one where time and space were fluid and malleable. Elysium IV was gone, lost in the depths of space and time. But a new world beckoned. Rachel stood at the forefront of this uncharted land, Dr. Vex's data crystal still clutched in her hand. The general took a deep breath, surveying the horizon with hope in her heart. Perhaps, just perhaps, humanity might yet find its way back to this planet, or even forge new paths in an infinite expanse of possibility. The future beckoned, shrouded in uncertainty and shadow. But Rachel stood tall, her spirit unbroken, as she gazed into an unknown tomorrow, carrying with her the hope that one day humanity would rise again from the ashes of its own destruction.